Our second reader is Judith Kerman. Judith lives in Woodstock, New York, but has a strong Michigan connection. She is an emerita professor from Saginaw Valley State, where she taught and was also an administrator. Judith earned her PhD from the University of Buffalo and is a poet, translator, musician, photographer, plastic artist, and computer artist. She has published 9 books or chapbooks of poetry, including Definitions, 2021, and Aleph, Broken, Poems from My Diaspora, 2016. Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Definitions is a collection of poems written in an innovative form, like dictionary definitions organized in alphabetic palindrome. That's quite a mouthful. Judith has also translated 3 books of Spanish poetry and has edited other books. She was a Fulbright Senior Scholar in the Dominican Republic in 2002, translating poetry and fiction written by Dominican women. In 2004, she also made a movie, Carnival in the Dominican Republic, 2002 to 2004, which is available to watch on YouTube. Judith is quoted as saying, "For me, poetry is at least partially a visual and musical art form."
Thank you. Very nice to be here. I'm going to read a little from Aleph Broken, and I'm also going to read some of the definition poems, which I'm still writing a little bit of. I have a few in my new manuscript. Mostly I'm going to read from the new manuscript. But this is Aleph Broken. And this poem isn't quite typical of it, but it is something I do a lot. It's called Millefleur. I coveted Grandpa's paperweight, a big old Millefleur, all through my childhood. Huge and heavy, concentric honeycomb of glass flowers in a crystal sphere. Later, I gave my father art glass paperweights so I could always find a gift for him. A speckled white orb with markings like petroglyphs, a teardrop-shaped flashing iridescence, a sand dollar fossilized to gleaming pyrite. He always said, "I don't need it," a line he inherited from Grandpa. But of course, it missed the point. My father at 12 had a revelation. There is no God. He refused to be bar mitzvah. No one has ever talked about the fight they must have had. He gave that gift to me. When Grandpa died, I was 19. The next day, I came down with German measles. All week, I curled up under the flower quilt, reading Lord of the Rings, spared having to sit Shiva. Shiva is 7 days of people visiting you, and theoretically you're going to sit on a wooden box and everybody will bring you food. Obviously, from the title of this, a lot of these poems have to do with my Jewish heritage. Let's see if I can get this in the camera. It's not going to let me show it to you. Oh, well. Blurred background is sometimes foreground. This is called Snapshot. I've traveled a bit. This is a poem that comes out of my travel. Snapshot. It's somewhere in Europe, Poland or Germany. You can tell by the buildings. The 2 of them look so carefree, but it's hard to say where they are. Newlyweds, good friends on holiday. The picture is blurry, as if floating underwater. I don't know if they were relatives of mine, but I feel drawn into that city square, the old buildings squatting stolid as burgomeisters, where people are hiding in cellars filled with fine old wines. My mouth waters at the memory of conditori with their chocolate-wrapped marzipan balls. In American, we have no equivalent to Gemütlichkeit, or the white sausages, tasty but slightly obscene, the white asparagus, picked before the sun got to it. Gemütlichkeit, for those who don't know, is like the atmosphere of a place like the bar in Friends. That's a pretty good analogy. This is a definition poem, and I think about it a lot because of what's going on in the Middle East right now. When I was working on this book, it was accepted by another publisher, and he commented that the only problem with the book was I had no poems about Israel, and how could I write a book about the dilemmas of being a Jew in the 21st century without writing about Israel? And of course, he was right. And I wrote this poem as I had to think about what I meant by it, because he's very anti-Zionist, and I'm not quite there, but this is more pertinent than I would like it to be. It's called Israel. It is a definition which has 10 parts, appropriately, but not the 10 commandments. And it's a noun. 1, the national name of the Hebrew people. See also Jew, Israelite. 2, dreaming. 3, Jacob, after he dreamed. 4, an infected cut that pulls when I stretch, throbs at rest. 5, a settler state. 6, where we will be safe if all else fails. 7, what I wrestle with. 8, love and fear meeting on a desert road and making peace. 9, the land belongs to no one. We walk on it and draw lines. Mine, we declare in that toddler voice. 10, blood ties and blood. I think that's enough from this book. The new manuscript is called A Hard Frost, and it's about getting old, about health and disability, about living in the world and finding your place in it, I guess. And this first poem I'm going to read is called Brain Scan. In the shadowy image, I recognize my skull, the shape inherited from my father's line. My brain looks like an anatomy drawing done in ink, or sumie of a night forest, the arms of trees reaching into the dark. There is no happy reason to take this selfie, no tourist venue shining under the sun. I did not invite this walnut, cauliflower, thundercloud. I am standing at the edge of a cliff, about to lose my footing. This is actually a true story. Security. They had been arguing in class about psychology. His professor brought him to my office and went back to class. I closed my office door. My secretary called security. The student was a veteran, said psychology was snake oil. He told me about his conspiracy theories, his militia practice in the woods. He said the people who run things don't care about people like him. I listened, didn't tell him I agreed with his diagnosis, but not his cure. Maybe he hoped a degree would make the difference, but he was fighting it. I'm one of the ones that he was not. Now I'm retired. I don't own a gun. What could I say to him if he came marching down my country road with his rifle and fatigues? I think about him a lot these days. So that's a section that I think of as kind of being about threat. There are some COVID poems in there too. And this is about being in the hospital. And it is a form I'm very fond of, which is the alphabetic acrostic. So each line begins with the next letter of the alphabet. I've written several of these. I might read a second one, but this is called Trying to Sleep. And if you listen a little carefully, you'll know which letter of the alphabet I'm on at the moment. All night, beeps of call bells. Never quite dark in the halls, doors wide open. Everyone's asleep, I think, but me. I toss, flail, rearrange my sheets, grimace as the woman across the hall calls out, "Help me get up!" Again and again. I grope for earplugs, jam them in, know this will go on less like last night, until she manifests in her doorway, a wobbling apparition in her nightgown. The floor nurse takes her to bed again. Through open doors, I hear their voices. Then peace. She's quiet a while, but I try to rest, hope to sleep, but no, soon she'll start again. 10 minutes, 15, did I sleep? Up the hall at the nursing station, voices low for a while, then louder. When will someone bring her Xanax? My feet itch from yellow hospital socks. Where is Zen mind when I need it? Of course, the wonderful thing about that kind of a form is you have to find the next word, the word that's going to give you the letter. Different poem, but about disability. It's called Wheels. What did the Inca do before the conquest? Did they carry their disabled up to Machu Picchu on their shoulders, bumping along the rocky trails on travois poles, on litters? I imagine they had people who couldn't walk, who fell off those terraced walls onto stone. There are ancient toys from India, little horses with wheels, but the genius of the Inca did not extend that far. The genius of my culture does not always extend that far. I push my way along, wheels bumping over paving stones and over the edges of badly installed ramps. I sit at the bottom of stairs, growling. This is a new definition poem that came while writing this book. It's called Foot, and it's in 5 sections, which it never occurred to me until this moment is the number of toes we have on our feet. And it's a noun. 1, not an accurate measurement. Mine may be more than 12 inches. The left is larger than the right. I'm not sure-footed. 2, why do we say foot the bill? 3, footing or pedestal is zocalo in Spanish. Once it meant an empty pedestal in Mexico City's Plaza Mayor, where lovers met. Then small towns adopted it. 4, I live in the Catskill foothills. That rhymes. 5, I don't like metered poems that dance robotic without nuance. Stomp on the ending. So this is a very recent poem. It's called Pain Says. Pain says, pay attention. It stands with its weapon at the barrier I may not pass. It twists pretzels in the back room of a bakery. It ebbs, leaving an empty beach, driftwood, shells where nothing lives. Pain distracts, pulls me down, reminds me that my bones echo when the wind blows. Hollow architecture of lime. It mutters my failings. Pain asks, do you have anything to say? I have nothing. Slight change of mood. This is another acrostic, another alphabetic acrostic, otherwise known as an abecedarian. It's called Downfall. A sense of balance comes in handy when you're drowsy or your mind is elsewhere, not watching where your feet are going. Without good balance, how can you avoid injury, twisted joints, and bruised knees? You need to look out, or your foot catches on a mat, or you bump into an obstacle not seen, and your ass over tea kettle, arms flailing into a pile of dropped books. Queer how tall the room looks from down here. Splashed coffee drips down the wall, testifies to your momentum. Uprightness seems impossible. Vertigo threatens as you wait for your breath to steady. X begins to mark your latest bruise. Zapped again. You see why I like this form. Couple of things from the end of the book. This is called orrery, and an orrery is a model solar system. And I start with a rather long epigraph, which I really love. It's from Edward Tufte, who's a great writer about the visual presentation of information. He says about orreries, although a triumph of gear ratios, the machines did commit a grave sin of information design, pridefully obvious presentation. By directing attention more toward miraculous contraptionary display than to planetary motion. Out by the reservoir, some evenings, I look south to see Venus, Mars, Jupiter, all lined up, some fixed stars not quite as bright. Then up to the river of our galaxy above. Imagine the sky as apparatus. The planets swinging each in its direction at its speed. The orrery invites us to see as God sees, to hold the whole thing in sight and mind, own it, set it on a desk. When they built it, no one knew about Pluto or the objects of the Oort cloud. Out so far, the sun is just another bright star. The toy solar system gets the revolutions right, but a true scale model would take up half of town. But when I was 12, I imagined infinity as a spaceship going on forever. It made me dizzy. When I told my Catholic friend, she clapped me on my shoulder, said I was religious after all. I think I'm going to do like 2 more, and then I want to sing you a few things. I've been exploring composition. My voice teacher is also a composition teacher, so I've been setting some of the poems, and I'll do a couple of those. This is called Milkweeds. The milkweed pod has dried to a curve of thin, thorny wood, the shape of a boat. In the hull, seeds overlap like shingles, the white floss aligned and neat as a dove's wing folded in sleep. The rabbi in the folktale told the gossip to slit a pillow and chase the feathers. Curious Pandora opened the box, let evils loose. Only hope was left behind. These seeds will fly without help in a day or a week, but I pulled the pod wider. Let them go. You may notice in some of these poems, a certain affinity for biblical imagery. That's certainly one of them. This is a brand new poem. It's called Thinking About My Funeral. And it's one of the last poems in the book, appropriately enough. I'm not at all morbid, by the way, and I don't expect to die soon, but somehow taking care of stuff seems important to me, and this is part of that. The green burial cemetery lets me choose forest or field. They allow only natural materials, a small marker carved from native stone, a wooden box, even just a shroud. I'd like a wicker basket. My friends will stand among the trees saying Kaddish. I've heard that forests communicate through their roots. They are writing Torah. I will join them. And this last one, which may or may not be the last poem in the book, I'm not sure. It's called Standing Stone. Sky shines overhead a bluebird's egg. Starling flaunts its speckled iridescence, yellow beak. The starved grass begins to green. I found this stone in a West Virginia river, brought it with me through 3 moves, set it up in 3 different yards among Mayapples spreading their wings. A friend who doesn't believe in Darwin roots her sense of sacredness in the body of an ancient Jew. I do not think I will persist after my body dies. The stone, once mud at the bottom of the ocean, pressed into rock by time, will outlast me. I expect to stay. I tend this little plot, welcome the skunks, raccoons, occasional fox or fisher. Part of me wants to see what is coming. Part of me is glad I'll be gone. And I just want to share a few of these poem settings. This first one, I had a residency at a place called Ragdale, just west of Chicago on the lake. And I was working on settings of the poems, and mostly I was working on soundscapes that I would read the poems over. But this one turned out to be a song, and I kept it, and it's still something I like a lot. It is a little piece of text from a book that I wrote in the 1970s that Helen actually had a hand in publishing, called Mothering. And Deep Sea Diver, who is sort of a character in this poem, is a character in the book. She sees him walking toward her across the seafloor, slow motion. The light is blue and shifting. It falls in curtains and rays. There are fish all around, swimming between them like stars, blue and striped and shiny. He walks like a robot. If he holds her, she will hear his engine running. She can feel nuts and bolts, holding his elbows together. She says, deep sea diver, I love you with your silence, with your dark blue movements, with the world floating away, with birth and death in one place. And I think just one more, and this is a pretty new one. It's a little poem called Wood Stove. I don't know how many people here have wood stoves, but if you do, you probably get this. Little black dragon, I wake you carefully with tools and rituals. If I make a mistake, you'll fill the room with smoke. Mouth full of flames, you're always hungry. Your heart rumbles and flares, a half-tamed forest fire. Thanks.